welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm McKelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 48 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we're discussing chapter 47 of A Game of Thrones, that's Eddard 13.
48. We're inching ever closer to the half-century mark.
Yeah.
Well, as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully we'll provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what's happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the TV show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out the show notes. They provide some additional information about the characters and other things of note in the chapter. And some jokes.
That's right. Witty humor in the show notes as well. Just in case anyone's confused or not sure what show notes are, when you go to our episode, there should be information there. I've had some folks not sure what we meant by show notes.
It's not unreasonable.
Right.
We know what we're talking about. Why should anybody else? How are you?
I'm a little hot. My air conditioning in the basement down here stopped working last week, and the HVAC guy can't get out here till tomorrow. So if you see my sweat beating on my brow, that's why. It's not the pressure of our 48th episode so much as the oppressive southeastern U.S. heat in the summer here.
It's been a little toasty the last couple of days.
Yeah. You know, he just put this unit in June 1st, he said. So it's fully under warranty, obviously.
Can't get the staff.
I know.
So
How about you?
We're watching High Fidelity on Hulu.
Oh, okay.
You've heard of that?
Yeah.
And it's based on the movie, which was based on the book.
Right.
And it's one of my favourite books of all time, and I really enjoyed the movie as well.
Yeah,
but they've done a gender reversal, yeah? The main character is female, and in the book and the original movie, it was male. And
cool.
It's a very interesting thing. I'm really enjoying it. I have no problems with it at all. It's just, I always thought that the book was sort of like the quintessential story of manhood and what manhood was like.
Right.
And so the main character is a man and, of course, simultaneously a child.
Right, yeah.
Because we are.
Yes, because men.
And he was pitiful and pitiable.
Right.
And, contemptible. And obviously the character in the show is supposed to be the same kind of character, but I find a sense of guilt feeling those same thoughts about her. I feel just because she's female, I should be more forgiving of these traits. But I guess I shouldn't. I guess this is...
I'll have to check that show out. We, too, raced through a Hulu original show. Is it Hulu original, or are you just watching it on Hulu?
It's a Hulu original, I think.
We raced through The Great. Have you watched that at all?
Mm-mm.
It stars Dakota Fanning's younger sister, something Fanning. Can't think of her name off the top of my head.
Vigorous?
Ellie Fanning, or something along those lines. She's very engaging. I really like her character. She plays a young Catherine the Great. And yeah, it has the kid from About a Boy,
which is the same author as High Fidelity.
Exactly, it all comes
connected. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Have you read any of his books, Nick Hornby?
No, but I know you are a big fan.
Oh,
so
man.
When we're all caught up in like 2026 and we're still waiting on Winds of Winter, I will then catch up on all those books.
I told you that we met him at a book signing, and he signed all of our books.
Yeah.
And he signed his first book is a book about being a soccer fan. He would say a football fan.
Right.
And he signed that one. He dedicated it to Lucas, my son.
Yeah.
And he said, Lucas, read this book and perhaps you'll understand your dad a little better.
He's clever, not just in his book writing, but in his notes as well.
That was mine and Carson's wedding anniversary. We went to the book signing and we told him it was our wedding anniversary, and he said, I hope you're taking her to something better than this afterwards. I wasn't. That was the high point.
And now look what he did. Now she's got expectations.
It's probably the best way I've ever managed, to be honest, in 21 years. It's probably the top. All right, we do not have time for banter, my friend.
We really don't. No, we've got much to talk about. The realm is in need.
This is an epic. This chapter alone is an epic.
It is.
This chapter alone could be 5 books worth. All right, so let's get down to business. Quick recap of what Eddard was up to last time we saw him. Last we saw him, he was telling Cersei that she needed to hightail it out of King's Landing before her husband returned from the hunt. Ned was determined to confront Robert with the news of his cuckoldry, and even more, that his children were not his own. His anger would kill them all. Why don't we give them the summary?
Let's do that. Real quick, in full disclosure, my dog did just walk into the room, so apparently I left the door open upstairs, so hopefully she's quiet. She sat through the whole last episode by my feet. Nobody but me even knew she was here.
I heard the creak of the door, but I have not heard her.
I figured you did. That door is rather a creaker. Anyway, on with the summary we go. Once again, Ned is dreaming. This time, he's in the crypts under Winterfell and he hears his promise to Lyanna. He's woken by a messenger from the king demanding his presence. He dresses, relieved that Robert has finally returned from the hunt. He enters Maegor's Holdfast, which is a castle within the castle, and passes 3 of the king's guard, strumming the chord of his previous dream.
Ned enters the king's chamber to find his old friend abed and severely wounded by a boar. Renly, Pycelle and Cersei attend him. Robert is mortally skewered from groin to nipple, but brags that he killed the boar, which should be the centrepiece of his funereal feast. Robert dismisses everybody else.
Robert, in a rare moment of introspection, reckons the boar was a reply from the gods for his sending assassins to kill Daenerys. He orders Ned to take up pen and ink and dictates his will. He says that Ned should act as regent until Joffrey comes of age. Ned wants to tell him the truth, but just can't bring himself to do it. Instead, he replaces Joffrey with my heir. Of course, being Ned, this tears him apart.
Robert signs the paper without reading it, and the attendants are called back in. Cersei is gone, Ned hopes for good. Renly and Pycelle witness the sealing of the will. The king tells Ned that he'll give Lyanna his love, and asks him to protect his children. Ned pictures Maya, Gendry, and Barra, and agrees to protect his children. Robert takes milk of the puppy and falls asleep.
Out in the hall, Selmy blames himself. Ned assures him that Robert put the blame on himself. Selmy says that Robert was too drunk, and Varys, who appears out of nowhere basically, asks who gave the king so much wine. Selmy says that it was Lancel Lannister, nephew to Tywin and cousin to the queen, who happens to be one of Robert's 2 squires.
As promised to Robert, Ned asks Varys to rein in his assassins. Varys says he'll try, but the birds have flown. As Ned leaves the holdfast, Renly catches up with him and offers the new protector of the realm 100 swords. Ned does not understand why he would need them. Renly wants possession of the children, make them Ned's wards, and thus bring Cersei to heel. Ned notes that the king is not yet dead.
Ned returns to the Tower of the Hand and doubles the crew that will take the girls to their ship that evening. He arranges for the ship to divert via Dragonstone so the letter can be delivered to Stannis. He sends for Petry Baelish, and he tells Littlefinger that the children are Jaime's and that Stannis is the true heir. Baelish does not act surprised.
Littlefinger argues against Stannis. He's iron hard and will fire the entire small council. It doesn't bother Ned. Casterly Rock will rise against him in favour of Joffrey's claim, and Stannis' unforgiving nature will drive other families to the Lannister cause. Baelish offers an alternative. Ned assumes the regency, marries his children to Cersei's, shapes Joffrey into a semblance of decency, or if not, then dispose of Stannis and elevate Renly to the throne by revealing Cersei's secret.
Ned lists the reasons he can't side with the Lannisters. His belief that Cersei killed Jon Arryn, Jaime ordering the killing of Jory Cassell, and Cersei admitting to the attempted murder of his son Bran. Baelish despairs and asks why he was brought here, if not for the benefit of his wise counsel. Ned does recognize the danger of the hour and wants men. The people at court who would be expected to take his side don't have enough men to counter even Cersei's household guard, and Jaime might be en route with a whole army.
Baelish says that the key are the gold cloaks, the city guard. But if the Queen orders one thing and the hand the other, what would they do? Well, they do whatever they were being paid to do. He gets 6,000 gold dragons from Ned to seal the deal.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes. Whew. That you might be wondering why such a long summary. That was intentional, because if we tried to step you through everything that happened in this chapter, it might be a 2-hour episode. So we wanted to give you all the details up front in case we gloss over any while we're going through the chapter.
Yeah, and even that we've curtailed quite large portions of that.
Yes, right.
We didn't mention that during the heart-to-heart between Ned and Robert asks Ned to try and make Joffrey a better man. Yeah. Which was... Ned agrees to try.
This chapter is just jam-packed with interesting things, and it's jam-packed.
Did you say interesting?
I did. It's jam-packed with juicy details. How about that?
That's very nice. So, fortunately, we didn't have to wait too long for the action to come back to King's Landing. If you remember last time, we were a bit mad that we'd gone off to Essos while King's Landing was bubbling.
Just a short commercial break.
Yeah, but it does feel like our worst fears came to pass. I mean, worse than our worst fears. We didn't think Robert would come back dead, essentially, from the hunt. We thought that Ned would at least have a chance to tell him, but now his having tipped his hand to Cersei looks even more foolish.
Yes.
Because if Ned was telling a hale and hearty Robert of Cersei's secret and her children's parentage, she really would be in trouble. But even if he told Robert now, it wouldn't make any difference. What would he do?
But there's not enough time for him to make any decrees. Maybe he could have. Maybe, we don't know. Maybe he could have called the small council together and said, this is what's going to happen. But I think Ned just didn't have the heart to do it at this time, regardless.
Yeah, I mean, imagine on your deathbed, you're told that your 3 children aren't yours. That's
right.
Pretty rotten.
Yeah, that's rough. Especially from your best friend.
Yeah. I've known for ages, too.
I just thought you should know at some point. And this is kind of the last moment, so.
But now I feel like Ned's life is in danger.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is a tough spot. And well, as we're going to discuss here throughout this chapter, I guess we should probably get onward with it. But he is presented with a few possible outs.
Yes.
But he's just Ned. He Ned Starks it. In every opportunity, he pulls a Ned Stark. In fact, Littlefinger says at one point, "Oh, yes, I forgot that I was talking to a Stark."
He should become the verb of intransigence, He Ned Starked to his course.
So, to get things kicked off here, yes, he's woken by the king's steward and he goes to Maegor's Holdfast, which is where the royal chambers are. And as he's walking there, he passes 3 Kingsguard. And it reminds him of the 3 Kingsguard that they faced at the Tower of Joy, where he then went and saw his dying sister.
Yeah. So there's a real parallel here, because he's just dreamed of Lyanna, and now he's going to a tower guarded by 3 Kingsguard to see his loved one dying in a bed of blood. I mean, that's a lot of parallels right there.
Yeah, sure is.
He didn't have to fight the King's Guard to get in this time.
So that's something.
Yeah. But he may have to fight to get back out.
which is good because he's got quite the limp at the moment.
Yeah. That's actually I don't bring this up in the differences with the TV show, but he's limping much worse in the book than he was in the TV show. By this time in the TV show, he's just walking with a cane.
Okay.
But here in the book, he's still being helped from place to place by his attendants.
Yeah, right.
He does very little on his own. Yeah.
I threw a little something in pedantry about that.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Well done. Well done.
But you know what? Quick thing about this promise me stuff. We hear him hear this promise me so often. It basically plays a loop in his head. And I wondered if that is something that's always happened since that day, since Lyanna died, or if it's just recent due to recent events here in King's Landing that he's hearing it and replaying that in his head so often these days.
Well, yes, I don't know. My suspicion would be that has never quite escaped him. Yeah. I think it probably has amped up here in King's Landing, but
yeah,
just because of the presence of Robert nearby.
Right, that's what I was thinking too. Yeah, drudging up old memories, painful.
Yeah. But I don't think it was ever completely hidden from him.
Yeah. I'm sure it wouldn't. How we don't exactly know what all it means, but regardless, it happened when his younger sister died, so that was something that probably will stick with him regardless.
Yeah.
So, Robert, not in such good shape, has kind of a what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know what the word you're looking for.
Like come to Jesus, but I'm trying not to say come to
Restive?
Jesus. No.
Inflammable?
Yes. Incorrigible. He is a restive, incorrigible, inflammable moment.
Yeah.
So
I just wanted to interject actually. In the scene, we also skipped over this. In the scene, at one point, when Robert's talking about feeding everybody the boar at his funeral, he asks Ned to promise him that that's what they'll do. Promise me, Ned.
Right.
So he gets one more echo of the whole Tower of Joy thing.
That's right. We forgot about that one. Yeah, it was such a Robert thing to say when he was talking about the boar, just destroying him and him saying, but I got him back in kind. I paid him back in bloody kind. Like trading a king's life for a boar is totally straight up here.
Yeah. So Robert's brokenhearted that he's going to die as a pretty pitiful king. And he sees his last action as the king, sending the assassins after Daenerys, as just one last thing he did wrong. She is a child. He shouldn't be murdering children. And that his small council was useless to him. Every one of them, the flatterers and fools, agreed with him. The only person who stood up against him was Ned.
Yep.
Robert now recognizes he should have listened to Ned. And he thinks that the killing, being killed by the boar was the god's revenge for this. He'd done one too many things wrong.
Yeah, and of course Ned, sweet Ned, Robert says, I was as bad as Ares. And Ned says, no, not so bad as Ares. That's him consoling Robert. No, you weren't as bad as the Mad King. Close.
Well, that fits with Ned's, I will say the absolute truth. You were not as bad as Ares the Mad King.
Right. But Robert thinks this last thing he's done right to leave Ned to rule, that Ned's going to hate it, just hate it more than Robert did, but he'll do well at it. And as we'll see in this chapter, I'm not sure. I think if Ned had time to get the environment in King's Landing set up the way he wanted it to, he might make a very good ruler, but he's not set up to be a very good ruler in this environment that's been created here.
No, because I think, well, I don't know. I mean, the problem is this. Cersei knows what he's like. Yep. Cersei tried every trick in the book last time she talked to Ned to convince him off this path, and he did not budge from this path. Robert's death is not going to change that.
Nope.
He is not going to say, as Robert asked, I'm going to take Joffrey under my wing and I'm going to turn him into a great king. He's not going to do that because he doesn't think Joffrey is the heir to the throne.
Yes,
and
right.
he's Ned Stark, so he's never going to change that opinion, even if he could turn Joffrey into a workable king.
Yeah, and I did have that wonder when he says, help my son make him better than me. I wondered if Ned did have 4 years with Joff as his ward, if he could make a difference in Joff, make him less of the monster-like little child he is.
Well, he couldn't do any worse.
Right.
He literally couldn't be any worse.
But could he do better? Could he improve him to the point where he could be a tolerable human being?
I actually think that the answer to that question is yes. I mean, I
do too.
I think Joffrey has a nasty nature, but 4 years of Ned Stark ruling over you and teaching you what you should be doing, I think could divert that nature.
Especially if he can get him away from Cersei. That would be key.
Yeah. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think there's going to be a stepfatherly arrangement between Ned and Joffrey. Because Ned can't help himself. He's going to blab that this is not Robert's son. So why would he take him under his wing?
Yep. So we do learn that Robert was told of the Gregor Clegane desummiting of the mountain, but he neither sent a reply nor turned back for home upon hearing the news. So I guess it wasn't as important as tracking down this boar is to him.
One last example of Robert the King.
Yes. But we also learned we had contemplated this last chapter of Ned's chapter was whether or not the Hound was made aware on the hunt, and we learned that he wasn't made aware. So he's just being told probably.
Didn't Robert say something along the lines of, let Cersei tell him that?
Yeah.
Presumably in the hope that she accidentally gets decapitated. So then, was this an accident? Varys, who appears from nowhere, as you said, he certainly sort of rakes the embers of this possibility with both Barristan Selmy and Ned Stark.
Definitely does.
By saying by asking questions about how did this happen? Was the king drunk? Selmy says he was rocking in his saddle before he got down. And he was like, well, how much wine did he drink? Well, more than one wineskin. Presumably that's a fair chunk of wine. And it was all Lancel Lannister bringing him wine whenever he asked, and possibly even when he didn't ask.
Right. Yeah.
Plying him with wine while he's on a dangerous thing.
Yep. And let's keep in mind that he is cousin to Cersei Lannister, and he was Cersei's pick. If you remember, right before Ned and Robert went to the second day of the Hands Tourney, he mentioned that Cersei picked his squires. And so you wonder if there might be some premeditation here, possibly. And then you wonder, well, we don't know the time between when Ned and Cersei had the meeting in the Godswoods, where he told her, I know about the kid's parentage. Was there time to then get a letter out to Lancel, or a note or some information out to Lancel that said, hey, I need you to do this for me? Or maybe this was planned ahead of time. We know right before he left to go hunt, the day before is when he hit Cersei in the face. So maybe that was the straw she was like, that's it. I'm taking him out. Lancel, I need you to do this.
Well, I mean, look, it's a very low probability assassination attempt.
Yes, right.
Get a man drunk on a boar hunt and hope the boar takes care of it. I mean, that's... But some of it is his nature. His nature is he wants to be the one to kill the boar. So he's facing down a 300-pound raging pig.
Yep.
You could miss and it could hit. And if you're drunk, it's more likely to happen that way. So, but I guess maybe it's just more a sort of sense of Lancel, at every opportunity, put that guy in danger.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
As much as you can.
Yes. Right.
And eventually he'll come to no good because he's a drunken oaf.
Yeah. I think that's...
If he wants to roller skate at the top of the stairs, you You
Tie
butter
up
that
those
ground in
rollers.
front of him. So, finally, there was a tiny bit of duplicity from Ned Stark.
Just a little bit. It tears
It was
him up,
very-
but there's a little bit.
Yeah, because Robert did say my son Joffrey, and Ned wrote my heir.
Yeah.
That's the main one. There is a secondary one where, when asked to promise to look after his children, to look after Robert's children, he thinks of Robert's real children and says, "Yes, I will."
His natural born ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if this belongs in pedantry or not, but I'm not sure what changing son Joffrey to my heir does exactly. Because now it says, rule in my stead until my heir comes of age. So it's still clear who it's talking about because Stannis is plenty of age.
Yes.
It just
But
removes
I
the
guess-
name.
Yeah.
Little bit
Yeah.
more vague, but it's still...
I agree. It is a bit strange. There is a slight difference with the TV show there, which I'll mention when we get to that.
Okay.
Which I think the TV show does a slightly better job of it because I agree. You haven't really done anything.
Yeah.
But I guess one's heir is not necessarily one's son, but it's the coming of age part. You're right. I mean,
Yes, right.
Without
Heir
that-
and Joffrey, that's legit. Heir and Joffrey, two very different things. But my heir until he comes of age clearly means he's not talking about Stannis, who is
Yeah.
probably in his 30s, I would assume, off
yeah,
the
I
top
think
of my
so.
head.
Yeah.
There's one thing he says here. When he says the thing about protect my children, and he says I will protect them as if they were my own, and he's thinking about the baseborn children. He says the lies we tell. Well, he doesn't say this. That would be a bad idea. He thinks.
yeah. I'll look after your children. Oh, the lies I tell. I think Robert would be onto that.
He might.
I'm delirious from the pain. I could have sworn you just said.
You just admitted a lying. He thinks in his head the lies we tell for love, and on one hand, it kind of reminded me of Jaime pushing Bran out the window, saying the things I do for love.
Yeah.
It's like this is Ned's version of like, oh, the things we do for love. This tiny little white lie to ease my friend's pain versus pushing a boy out the window. But it also made me wonder what other lies for love he's talking about, because he says lies, plural here. So,
Well, it could be both he has done two things here. He has
True.
changed the wording, so maybe it was that.
yes.
But I see what you mean. The whole promise me thing could be
Yes.
a lie he's telling.
Could be.
Interesting. So Pycelle and Renly come back in. They witness the seal on the will. They don't read it, of course, and neither does Robert. Robert signs it without reading it as well.
Yeah.
So nobody really knows what Ned did to that.
Yeah, and that made me... I wish there had been more people, because there's only two, one of which we know is a Lannister lackey. I mean, we've pretty much accepted the fact that Grand Maester Pycelle is in the Lannister pocket. Now, Renly is Robert's brother, so you would assume he's on Robert's side, and we'll be honest about if any contradictions come up about this, but it just seems like it would have been better if it had been a larger group around to hear that.
Yeah, but like you say, it is at least one from each side. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure Pycelle would lie and say, I never witnessed that, if asked to by the Lannisters, but
Yes, that's exactly what I'm getting at, yeah.
did, so...
And speaking of Pycelle, he says he'll do all that he can for Robert, but it's too late. And if he is in the Lannister's pocket, I wonder if he really has done everything that he can do. Or if maybe he's been instructed, make it look like you're doing everything you can do, but just let this take its course.
Well, I'm not that kind of doctor, but...
Yes, Dr. McGrother?
I'm going to say that I don't think he could do much for him. It sounded like he had gangrene in the chest
Yes.
when he arrived. I think that's
Ugh.
probably beyond they all agree he stinks of death, and they've all smelled it before. So
yeah, this might have been taken out of his hands to.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Ned, who I see as stoic as a stone, almost pukes when he smells it. So
Yeah,
that's not a good sign.
So when Robert calls them all back in because he wants them to witness the sealing of this letter, Cersei's not there. It's just Pycelle and Renly. And, that begs to wonder, what's she doing? Could she be preparing to flee because she's concerned about the retribution? If she's assuming that Ned told Robert, which I imagine she's assuming Ned would have done, or is it more likely that she's planning her next move now that Robert won't be around to take his revenge against her? Whether or not Ned spills the beans.
Yeah, because if Ned spills the beans and Robert says, guards, go and seize the queen and her children, then if she's encamped in her quarters with 100 guards outside, they're not going to get through.
Yeah.
And she can countermand the order, assuming that the king dies before this all gets resolved,
Yeah.
If the king dies before this all gets resolved, then her son is the king,
Yeah, exactly. Ned hopes that she's fleeing, but can he really believe that? Later on, he's kind of thinking to himself, he admits that the Lannisters are too proud to flee, which is almost verbatim what I was saying in the previous Ned chapter, that I didn't think this was a great idea to tell Cersei because I thought the Lannisters were too proud to just pick up their stuff and flee.
Yeah. Renly certainly thinks she's planning, not packing.
Yes.
And has been planning since the moment Ned told her.
Yeah.
So Renly's plan, as he voices it to Ned, is to seize the children in order to bend Cersei to their will.
Yep.
Once they have possession of the children, they have all the power, because Ned is protector of the realm, basically king regent, and he has, let's say, in his clutches, the princes and princess.
Right.
And so Cersei ought to behave herself, you'd think.
Yes, you would think if that works as planned. Of course,
but
if he knew Ned at all, he would know that's out of character for him. It's too dishonorable of a deed, and Ned just can't
not
do
necessarily. Not necessarily, though, because if you think about it, Renly doesn't know the story of Joffrey's parentage yet.
Right.
So what Renly is thinking is, I don't want the throne going to Cersei Lannister here.
Yeah.
I don't want her acting as Queen Regent until Joffrey assumes the throne. I want Ned to be King Regent until Joffrey's ready, and to have an opportunity to make Joffrey a better person, because he's probably seen it too.
Yeah.
I think Renly's the one person who's laughed in Joffrey's face a couple of times.
Yes, we've mentioned this a few times about there seeming to be bad blood between the two of them.
So, what Renly's suggesting there probably doesn't seem that out of Ned's character, because you're saying, Ned, do what you've been told to by Robert, but just do this one other thing. Take those children out of Cersei's clutches so that they can be bettered, and that Cersei does what we want of her, which is basically to be quiet and not do anything.
His plan is a shorter-term plan than the one that Petry Baelish lays out in a little bit here. This is more like at least get through the small council ratifying you as the king regent. Then, as long as you've got her kids, she will fall into line. But of course,
and I think it is a short-term plan, because the problem with that is, if Jaime comes back at the head of an army,
right,
then that could be unpicked very quickly. Now, you'd imagine that the Kingsguard and the Gold Cloaks would defend the King Regent and the Prince, because the Prince would be part of that same group.
Yeah.
But it would be a little bit conflicted, because the Queen, or rather the King's mother...
Is she the Dowager Queen now? Is that
something like that? Yes. Yeah. would be saying the opposite. And so again, you'd be in that same situation of, you'd have people who have loyalty to the realm not knowing which way to fight.
Right. Yeah. I definitely think there's merit to the plan. And Renly makes a few good points. Ned said something about the gods being merciful and Robert possibly living, and he replies, the Lannisters won't show mercy, and he's right, and I think the plan should work the way he draws it up. And remember, Renly and Loras Tyrell had been working to try and replace Cersei with Loras's younger sister Marjorie Tyrell.
That's right.
He's had this idea of let's get rid of Cersei for a while now. So this is
even without the knowledge of the parentage of Joffrey.
Yeah, he just wants to get
rid
of him.
I wonder if this goes to his contempt for Joffrey. If that's really what's going on here. Yeah. So maybe that's his secret plan is to murder the princes and princess while they have them under their spell, so that he becomes second in line to the throne behind his brother.
Yeah. He's just not revealing that part to Ned because he knows Ned well enough to know that's not going to fly.
But the problem is, of course, you're absolutely right. This pitch falls on deaf ears to Ned because of what Ned knows that Renly doesn't.
Right.
In actual fact, if they were true-born Baratheon children, this plan is not a terrible plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in fact, the regent would have an authority to raise the children over the mother, perhaps.
Yeah. I like it. But Ned, once again, Ned Stark's the situation, and he did just risk a whole lot, including his own children's safety, to give these kids a chance to escape and survive. So I guess it's not too far of a fetched thought to say he's not going to pull them out of their beds in the middle of the night at knife point.
But if Ned had them, Ned knows that he won't murder them.
Right.
He would protect them and do what Robert asked of him. Try to raise Joffrey to be a better person.
Even if he's not raised as the king.
But both Robert and Renly didn't know the one thing that Ned knows.
Right.
Which is Ned isn't going to raise this cuckoo because he is not a Baratheon.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about Varys. He's only got 3 lines in this whole chapter, but he is involved a lot in the stuff going on here. As you mentioned earlier, he's clearly leading Ned to consider Lannister foul play with his reference to Lancel plying Robert with the wine. And that, I wondered why. Because if you remember back to that Arya chapter when he and Illyrio Mopatis are kind of scheming and plotting in the dungeons, he's asked to keep the stability in the realm by Illyrio. It's too soon for war. Stall, and he says, how do you want me to do that? It's really hard to get a read on him, because in the 7th Ned chapter, he tells Ned that the Lannisters plan to kill Robert in the melee. Remember, Cersei forbade him from participating in the melee.
Yeah.
And that, of course, she knew would cause him to insist on being in it, and then, there would be some sort of accident. And then he and Mopatis are talking about possibly killing Ned if he discovers Joff's parentage. Remember, he says he's got one bastard. It's only time before he finds the rest, and he's got the book. How long before he figures this all out?
Yeah.
But then Mopatis asks to delay the war, and Littlefinger makes a really great point that Stannis equals war.
Yeah.
Stannis on the throne, and the realm will bleed. So you would think then he would choose the Lannister side, which means he wouldn't want to tell Ned that, hey, this might be foul play on the Lannisters' part. So it seems like he's doing a balancing act of stability versus instability it seems like they're priming for some future event that isn't quite ready yet, which you assume is a Targaryen reemergence into Westeros.
Yeah. Okay. Let me interject with a contradictory point, perhaps, or not
Yes.
necessarily contradictory, but maybe another layer of this. I think that he is telling Ned that he's planting the idea in Ned's head that the Lannisters conspired to murder Robert in order that Ned tread very carefully. I assume Varys already knows that Ned knows the big secret. That
Right.
Joffrey and Tommen and Myrcella are not Roberts.
You would think if he's doing his job right.
And what he's saying is the Lannisters are so dangerous, they just murdered the king, essentially.
Yeah.
They just took steps to murder the king. You've got to protect yourself here. You can't just let this roll. If you let this roll, things will go badly. Now, maybe you're right. Maybe the point is, if he doesn't say anything, Ned allows Joffrey to assume the throne, and the kingdom is too stable to allow the Targaryens return.
Yeah, but that makes a lot of sense, what you just said. And that would go back to creating some stability if Ned is more careful and doesn't just announce this to everyone and it blows up in everyone's face and we've got a huge war.
Yeah. And I think Varys cares for Ned. It feels to me from their interactions. I mean, Varys is a very difficult character to read.
Yeah, plus he's a good actor. So
yeah, but he seems to have he genuinely likes Ned and wishes the best for him. So maybe it is just a warning.
Yeah,
just
could be.
There is nothing they won't stoop to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's...
So, that's very interesting, though. I'm glad you brought it up. So, Ned retreats to the hand of the king and writes a letter to Stannis. If you remember, the girls are about to get on the boat back to Winterfell, or at least to the north. It's not a very big detour to go to Dragonstone, where Stannis is. So he's writing a letter to Stannis, telling him that by the time he gets the letter, his brother will be dead, and that Robert died without any true-born children.
Yeah.
So Stannis is the heir to the throne. It has to be handed directly to Stannis, not to anybody else. And they have to raise the Stark flag, and because Stannis is very concerned by who's coming to visit him at Dragonstone.
Right.
Understandably, given that Jon Arryn was murdered and now his brother has been killed in not terribly suspicious, but slightly suspicious circumstances.
Yes.
While he's writing this letter, this is where Ned has the sort of insight of the Lannisters aren't going to flee. They're going to fight this.
Yeah, especially with Robert dead. There's no reason to flee at this point.
Yeah. Because you make the claim now, Joffrey is not Robert's son, and who backs it up? Nobody.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody denies it, and you got no proof. You make it to Robert, and he goes, "Yes, that blonde rat. He's nothing like me."
Yeah, and it's Ned. It's his best friend who he trusts more than anyone, giving him this information. Right. And Robert has basically unchecked unilateral power to say, these are not my children. But with Robert gone, the next in line is Joffrey, who can say, I am. So it's a much, much harder sell now.
So Ned also thinks, as he writes the letter, that his regency will be very short, because it's not a very long trip from Dragonstone. Stannis will march in and he'll be done. It's wishful thinking, I feel.
Yeah, it's a bit naive to think that Stannis is just going to waltz in and claim the throne and the Lannisters won't put up a fight. I mean,
yeah. In many ways, I think Renly's idea actually kind of works towards that. I mean, Ned should do what Renly suggested, and then once Stannis arrives as king, he says, okay, you go back to your mother now.
Yeah, you're right. That would make it a lot less of a tenuous situation. If he had the children in his protection, not saying he's going to harm them, if he got the children away from Cersei into his protection, then he will control how the situation plays out a lot more.
Then it becomes simply a foot race between Stannis and Jaime Lannister.
Right. Yeah.
Whoever arrives first, basically it's over.
Yeah. Yeah, the Lannisters are just too power hungry to just let Stannis be like, all right, Well, let Stannis be the king. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. If they do, they're going to say, "Oh, by the way, you owe us 6 million."
Right.
And payment is due today.
Yeah.
So when Littlefinger visits Ned, they talk. Littlefinger describes what a Stannis reign would look like. It sounds pretty awful. The first thing he says, and this possibly goes to his motive, is that he would fire the entire small council.
Right. That is the first thing he leads with.
But then he also mentions that being as hard and rigid and unforgiving as he is, there are a lot of people who crossed him during Robert's rebellion.
Yes.
And those people... Robert did the right thing when he became king. He forgave everybody. He said, you were honourable, you fought for your king, now I'm in charge, I forgive you.
In the name of peace, he forgave them to heal the realm.
And Stannis, and to be fair to Stannis, he had a rougher time of it than Robert. Robert was out fighting and having fun, Yeah. Stannis was starving to death at Storm's End.
Right.
While the Redwynes and the Tyrells were feasting... upwind of him so that he could smell their delicious dinner.
Yeah. That's tough. Yeah.
So if I'm a Tyrell or a Redwyne now and this comes to war, who am I siding with?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. That's
and that's a big duo. I mean, the Tyrells and the Lannisters on the same side of a battle. That's
right.
A lot of wealth.
Yep, the two richest families on the same side. Plus, the Redwynes have the strongest fleet in Westeros, so that would not be so great for Stark and company. Yeah. And you remember...
And plus, I was going to say, plus geographically, they're kind of the two of the more convenient ones for King's Landing as well.
Yeah. You remember Lord Varys told Ned... that when Ned rejected letting Loras go on the mountain hunt, he said, for a person with Lannisters as enemies, you want to have Tyrells as friends.
Yeah.
This would certainly not make the Tyrells his friends.
Yeah. So the Baratheon banners, if you imagine, the Baratheon banners could also be split as well. They wouldn't all go to Stannis' side, because some of the Baratheon loyalists would think, wait a minute, Stannis, Joffrey is the king. Why are you... Joffrey is a Baratheon. He's the heir, not you.
Yeah.
So you can easily imagine some of the Baratheons fighting on the Lannister side here.
Some of the Baratheon loyalists or
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, yes.
The crown,
people who owe allegiance. Yeah. Stormlands and Crownlands. People who owe allegiance to the Baratheons. Some of them would say that you're going to hear two conflicting stories.
Absolutely.
You're going to believe one of those two stories.
Yeah, there's no DNA
side.
proof that Ned can show and say, here, see? So it's going to be a he said, she said situation at this point, and some might believe him and some might not. So yeah, I could definitely see them being split, their loyalty.
23 and thou. So you've got the Westerlands, you've got the Reach, the Iron Islands, and they're another one. Stannis hates the Greyjoys.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's another one who's driven into the arms of the Lannisters and that's more fleet. So now the Redwynes and the Iron Islands together, that's basically all of the fleet strength of the of Westeros, all on the one side. So on the other side, you'd have the other half of the Baratheons. You'd have the North, the Riverlands, and the Vale.
Maybe
the Vale aren't going anywhere.
You don't know. Yeah, you don't know about the
Vale.
I
mean, you can assume you're not getting anything from the Vale because they're useless.
Yes.
The Riverlands are already besieged and a bit of a mess. Yeah. The North is miles away.
Right. Yeah.
Doesn't look good.
If we were generals and we were on our military map and we were dividing up the armies, it would not look good for Stark and company.
No. The one factor you could throw in here, which really doesn't come into the books until a bit later, so this is a little preemptive, is Dawn.
Right.
You could, because the Royals of Dawn do not like the Lannisters.
Oh no, they don't.
Because
enemy
their
number
daughter,
one.
Exactly, their daughter Elia Martell was Rhaegar Targaryen's wife, and she and her two children were murdered by the Mountain.
Right.
And if the Starks and Stannis sided with, reached out to them, they'd come a running, I think.
Yes.
They would love nothing
agree.
better. So that could be a not a deciding factor, but maybe an equalising factor.
Yeah.
But anyway, it feels pretty knife-edged, that's for sure.
Yes, I would put I would give the edge to the Lannister side at this point.
I would too. But maybe Dawn could help. I mean, and the thing is, I don't think of Dawn as being that populous.
They're not.
Yeah.
I think they're really good at defending their own realm. I don't know how useful they would be, in a war where they have to come up out of Dorne.
Yeah, that's a really good point, yeah. So, Littlefinger's reasoning is rock solid. If the Baratheons are the rightful royal family, then there are only two, Stannis and Renly. They're the only two possible next king.
Yep.
And if Ned tries to put Stannis on the throne, the kingdom will burn, and more than likely, Joffrey will end up on the throne.
Yep.
Which I think is a very good point. That's a sobering thought.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing you don't want.
He causes all this chaos and war, and ultimately it ends up with Joffrey on the throne anyway. So,
if Ned could bury the hatchet, act as regent, quietly remove Stannis, then reveal Joffrey's parentage, Renly could take over in what would be essentially a bloodless coup.
Yeah.
When that happens. If nothing else, the anti-Lannister forces would have a few years to plan together.
Right.
To get to that point.
Yeah. And he's also, another thing that Littlefinger mentions is that Stannis can't rest easy until the Lannister kids are dead. Because there's always going to be dissent for those who think that Ned just tried to usurp the throne from Joffrey. And he's just put a whole bunch of people, including his children, at risk to try and save Joffrey and his brother and sister. So he's it's a 6 of one, half dozen of another type situation here, unless he uses Littlefinger's or Renly's plan, or one of his own that he hasn't divulged yet. But it seems like he's just going to plow straight ahead, and Ned Stark, overly rigid, overly honorable way, and get into some trouble.
I've got an interesting thought experiment for you here. So, like I said, stick to your own plan, Ned, but bring in Renly's plan. So you send the message to Stannis, you're the king, come on home. Meanwhile, you assume the regency and capture the 3 children and keep them under your protection until Stannis gets there. Stannis gets there and assumes the throne. Stannis then says, I'm beheading those 3.
Right.
Then Ned's in an awkward position because then everything he did led to the one thing he's been trying to avoid, which is protecting these kids.
Yeah, that's true. He would have to then secretly get them out of Westeros really quick.
Right. Which would then put him in the red wine Tyrell class of Stannis friends.
Right, yeah. Oh, boy. Yeah.
I mean, and that's the other thing. I mean, the other thing about sort of like delaying and giving Stannis time is if he could bring himself to forgive the Tyrells and the Red Wines, that would tip the balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they don't, I mean, the Tyrells and the Red Wines, I always think this of them, and I don't know what I base it on, but they are wealthy and they live in a beautiful part of the world.
Right.
They don't want to fight. They just don't want stuff to come back on them.
They're fat, soft, and rich,
Exactly. The last thing they want is to go to war.
The Red Wines just want to drink their wine. Tyrells just want to smell their roses.
Exactly.
But once again, Littlefinger says, what Littlefinger says to Ned is very similar to what Cersei said to him in the previous Ned chapter. He says, the power is yours to take, Lord Stark. Just reach out and take it. But again, Ned's honor feels like it's going to get in the way of him doing such a thing.
Yep. So Baelish paints the picture that the gold cloaks are the key. If they can get the 2,000 gold cloaks on their side, they'll have what they need to tip the balance.
Yeah. The problem is, though, in order to do that, he has to trust Littlefinger, which he hasn't done in the past. And for good reason. Littlefinger does seem rather shady. So this is putting a lot of trust. This plan with the gold cloaks puts a lot of trust in a guy he's not necessarily trusted to this point.
But then if you don't trust Littlefinger, why not just call Janos Slynt into your office yourself?
Yes.
Make the offer directly.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole 6,000 gold dragons, he's taking 1,000 off the top of that. You know
Right.
it. Save yourself 1,000. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no reason why he couldn't. Baelish makes it seem like that Ned knows he has to come to him because this is underhanded, shady work, and Baelish is the guy who does this kind of thing. But he could do it himself. There's no reason why he couldn't call him in and say, I need your support, and I'm willing to pay you guys extra for it.
Yeah, it's not like there's some secretive band of brigands. I mean, we know the name of the guy in charge of the Gold Cliffs.
Right.
We can talk to him.
He probably has an office somewhere in the Red Keep.
So yeah, we're trusting Littlefinger to bring those onto Team Stark, and that should be enough. That should be enough, at least until Jaime arrives.
Yeah.
Without them, it's just Ned's household guard and Renly and his retinue, which is only like 30.
Yeah, which he's already declined. So,
yeah,
I guess this might not be too late. And Ned wonders, maybe I should have taken him up on that, because his not only is he only have his household guard, but they're short-staffed. So,
yeah. And I think at one point in this chapter, he actually sends as many men as it takes. Oh, it's to find Littlefinger, I think.
Yeah.
So he actually sends away all of his guards to go find Littlefinger. I'm like, dude, you've got to stop doing this.
His doors are swinging wide open. Where's that draft coming from?
And someone's like thumbtacked kick me on his back. All right, so fantastic stuff. So to background, I thought I'd just mention Lancel Lannister. He's the son of Kevan Lannister, who's Tywin's younger brother. So Kevan would be Cersei and Jaime's and Tyrion's uncle.
Yep.
Lancel got the Lannister look and is reported to be very similar in looks to Jaime, just a younger version of Jaime. His mother is Dorna Swift, who has a slightly interesting backstory, if you'll indulge me. Her father was in debt to the Lannisters, isn't everyone? And Tywin, ever the understanding soul, demands a family member of the Swifts as hostage until the debt is paid. Dorna is duly delivered to Kevan Lannister, and that's how they met.
Okay.
It's not clear as to whether the debt was paid off by marrying her.
Right.
It may have been. Tyrion reckons that Sir Harys Swift, Dorna's father's greatest triumph as a lord was marrying his daughter so far up the social ranks to a Lannister.
Sure, yeah. And not just a Lannister, but the younger brother of Tywin Lannister, you know?
Exactly, yeah. So, because Robert's on the verge of death, I had a little look into what the practices and beliefs are around death in Westeros. So, according to the holy text of the Faith of the Seven, which is called the Seven-Pointed Star, lives are like candles, easily extinguished by errant winds.
Uh-huh.
On dying, the faithful are welcomed by the stranger, who is one of the seven, who guides you to your eternal home. The afterlife is a sweet rest in a distant, sweet land, where all may laugh, love, and feast until the end of days.
Doesn't sound too bad.
According to the faith, there are 7 heavens and 7 hells. But what I've been unable to determine is, do you move through these? Or are you assigned one, depending on how good or bad you were?
Right.
I don't know about that, I'm afraid. So each of the 7 hells is deeper than the next. Sinners who do not repent their sins go to the 7 hells, although the 7-pointed star states that all sins may be forgiven, crimes must still be punished. Interesting.
Okay.
Distinction between crimes and sins. The Lord of the 7 hells is said to command demons and to practice black arts.
All right. Well, since the Baratheon/Lannister children are possibly in a little bit of peril here, I wanted to reference a previous instance.
Hang on. /Stark.
That's true. /Stark. Lots of kids in some peril here. I wanted to reference an instance where children were directly put in harm's way in the name of the Iron Throne previously. It's happened many a time in the name of the Iron Throne, but this particular instance was the children of Queen Helena Targaryen, the wife of King Aegon II. And some thought that she had the Targaryen madness, but It's more likely that she was driven to depression and madness by the awful choice that she was forced to make during the early stages of the Dance of the Dragons, which we have referenced before as kind of the Targaryen Civil War. Her uncle Daemon, who was also her brother-in-law as he was married to her older half-sister Rhaenyra, hired men to trap her and force her to choose one of her 2 sons to have killed. She ultimately chose the younger son, Maelor, as he was too young to understand what was really happening. Instead, the men killed the older son, Jaehaerys. She never recovered from it and couldn't look at Maelor without thinking of her choosing him to be the one that died, and she ultimately jumped from a window to her death.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Rough. That's not very nice.
That's a rough one there.
That is a rough one. Okay, so the comparison with the TV show, mostly verbatim. Renly bumps into Ned and brings him to Robert Chambers. He's not in the Tower of the Hand. There's no 3 Kingsguard because he wasn't having the dream, so there's no counterpoint to that.
Right.
Ned arrives to a sweet scene between Robert and Joffrey, where Robert's saying, "I should have shown you how to be a man. I was never meant to be a father." And then Joffrey leaves sort of in tears, so it's kind of sweet.
Yeah.
Ned and Robert have their alone... Yeah, it's interesting that was not in the book, I guess.
Yeah, I was just thinking, as you were saying that, it's a shame there was we never really saw any interaction at all between Robert and his children.
They weren't.
It's true, I guess that could be why.
So Ned and Robert have their alone time. Ned pulls the trickery with the will, but in the show, he substitutes my rightful heir for my son Joffrey, whereas in the book he just wrote my heir.
Yes.
That does change it just a little bit. I mean, it still says comes of age, right. But the rightful part is interesting.
Yeah. Helps a little bit anyway.
Mm-hmm. Varys probes about who plied Robert with wine. Ned is clearly suspicious. Barristan Selmy is bereft at his failings. Ned, just as he did in the book, tells him that no one could save Robert from himself. Renly makes the offer of 100 swords to Ned, but he's more direct about his true motives. He wants the throne for himself, Renly. He basically says it.
Huh.
He undermines Stannis, taking some of the words that in the book Petry Baelish said about Stannis, and Renly says them.
Okay.
We don't want Stannis as king because of yada yada yada.
Right.
Make it me instead. Otherwise, apart from those words that Renly stole, Ned's scene with Petry Baelish is pretty much verbatim. So a lot of similarities.
All right.
Pedantry. No time for pedantry. Surely.
The
kingdom is in turmoil. What have you got?
One tiny little thing I wanted to mention. Remember back in the... Well, you might not remember this, but in the 4th Ned chapter, you put in pedantry that Littlefinger referred to gold pieces instead of gold dragons. You thought was a mistake. He does it here again.
I do remember saying that.
All right.
Pedantry.
He does it here again. He calls it 6,000 gold pieces. So maybe it's a fingers thing. Maybe folks from the fingers refer to gold dragons as gold pieces. You know, it's like a geographical vernacular type deal.
Yeah. I get you.
The other quick thing was, they've not invented crutches yet? I looked through the book. I did a search on the book. The only time the word crutch is used is when the blacksmith is talking to Ned about making armor and stuff, and that's using a crutch to do something, like, you know, not a reference to crutches, because multiple times in this chapter Ned is being helped here and there by Tomard and Cain. So just surprising that they have not evolved to crutches.
Rock solid, my friend. That's pedantry. All right, so news and notes. Keep sending us your questions for the 50th episode. We've got quite a few now.
Yes.
It's going to be worthwhile.
Thank you.
But we'd welcome more. Email us, reach out on social media, whatever. Send us a voice memo. You get your own voice on the podcast.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Man. We did get an email from Bob about our discussion of the words restive and incorrigible as being words that sound like they mean the opposite of what they mean. And he threw into the mix the word inflammable. Because flammable means that will burn.
Right.
Inflammable sounds like it ought to be the opposite, but it also means it will burn. So that is a very solid point.
Yes,
Bob.
well
Thank you
done,
very
Bob.
much.
Thank you for reaching out with that.
All right, let's wrap this up.
Okay.
7 hells. Robert is a goner,
Aw.
and Ned hadn't the heart to ruin his last few hours on this mortal coil.
Yeah.
So now the only people who know that Ned knows the secret are Cersei herself and some of the flatterers and fools in the small council.
You'd think at least a couple of them have some pretty good guesses. We know now that Littlefinger knows because he just told Littlefinger, but you'd have to think Varys knows as well. You know, it's his job. He knows some crazy stuff that he shouldn't know. You'd think he knew this all along.
Well, from what he said to Illyrio Mopatis, it does appear he did know all along.
That's right. Yes, he said how long before he figures out the truth.
Sorry, but he doesn't know that Ned has figured it out.
Right.
That's the difference. And Ned hasn't said anything to anyone apart from Cersei. In the Godswood, where perhaps the little birds could not reach.
Oh, maybe. He just told Littlefinger. And it seems like Littlefinger and Varys have some give and take with their secrets. Because Littlefinger, we didn't mention this at all, but Littlefinger says to him, hey, I hear congratulations are in order. And of course, Ned is like, our king lays dying. What are you talking about? And he said, yes, but I hear you were named Protector of the Realm. And he's like, where did you get that information from? And he said, Varys had a guess, and you just confirmed it. And he's like,
Yeah. They got me again.
Why I oughta?
So, again, the TV show made it clear that Renly wanted the throne for himself, but now thinking about it, maybe there were the beginning of that here anyway in the book.
Yeah, because Littlefinger mentions it, you know, so it's not like something that nobody would have thought about. He might make the better king of the two brothers, so... And he's probably aware of that fact, or at least believes it himself.
But, as far as we know, he doesn't know that Joffrey isn't a true Baratheon.
True. Yeah.
That's the one thing about Renly. He's the one in the dark on that, it seems.
Yeah. But Varys, he keeps us guessing about his goals. Sometimes he seems to be on...
That's why we love him.
Yep. Sometimes he seems to be on Ned's side, then not, then he is. Sometimes he wants peace. Sometimes he seems like he wants war. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah. But on the subject of who's on the path to war, Ned Stark
seems
is on
to
the path
be.
to war.
Yes.
Yeah. Just a little chicanery, and he could be on a path to power and a better outcome for all concerned, not least the entire realm.
Yeah, you would think he would take... I mean, I get it, he's Ned Stark. But take a step back. Take a second. Think of what Renly has suggested. Think of what Littlefinger has proposed. They're not terrible ideas, and they make some really solid points. But Ned is Ned, so you just don't know.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, because the plan would involve subterfuge and moral flexibility, and ultimately political assassination. That's one thing to bear in mind. For the plan as laid out between Renly and Petry Baelish to work, you have to assassinate Stannis Baratheon.
Yeah, that's Ned's never going to do that.
Exactly. He's not a child, but still.
Yeah, it's true.
So that kind of plan is not exactly crying out to Ned's spirit animal, is it?
Not so much, no. But he is putting an awful lot of stock in Littlefinger to acquire those gold cloaks for his side. And Littlefinger does not exactly make you want to trust him.
He tells you not to.
True, he does multiple times. Yeah.
Don't trust me. All right. So as always, you can reach out to us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com and follow us on Twitter at ghostharrenhall, Facebook, Instagram, and now YouTube.
And if you wouldn't mind going out and leaving a review for us on Apple Podcasts or iTunes or podchaser.com or anywhere you can find to leave a review, it really would help us out. It would really mean a lot to us, and we would be very grateful.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.